Cyberpunk 2077 feels incomplete. And I don't mean because of cut content or bugs. I played Cyberpunk years after it was released, when most of the game's performance issues were fixed. While I had a fun time playing, I couldn't help but feel that something about the game was off. The more I thought about it, I realized the story of Cyberpunk 2077 is at complete odds with its gameplay. In video game analysis, this is called ludonarrative dissonance, and it means just that. When a game's story or narrative contradicts its ludology or gameplay. While ludonarrative dissonance is not always a negative principle, and can be intentionally fostered in certain games as a storytelling tool, it's clear that the dissonance in Cyberpunk 2077 is unintentional. The issues I'm going to discuss are not game-breaking in and of themselves, but they all add up to weaken the foundations upon which the game world stands. As a result of its ludonarrative dissonance, Cyberpunk 2077's morals end up somewhat askew. In the story, it's made pretty clear that the narrative operates along the assumption that murder is wrong. During a quest in Judy's storyline, where you have the option of killing Woodman, a serious sexual predator and lowlife, taking revenge ultimately brings no satisfaction. Judy only feels empty and unsatisfied after his death, while refusing to kill him is what actually brings Judy some peace. Both in this quest and throughout the storyline, murder is clearly shown to be at best a necessary evil, and at worst a corrupting force on one's humanity. The strongest example of this can be witnessed in the final battle of the game. If you previously chose to be merciful and spared Oda's life after defeating him, Adam Smasher, the ultimate archetype of everything corrupt, oppressive, and malicious in the game world, mocks you for your weakness.
You spared Oda, so very human and disgusting. Mercy is disgusting.
Positioned as the principal villain of the game, antithetical to all things righteous, Adam Smasher's utter disdain towards mercy is a strong indicator of the game's endorsement of sparing foes as moral good. Appropriately, there are several methods of non-lethally dispatching enemies in the game. Elemental damage, blunt weapon attacks, certain quick hacks, non-lethal stealth takedowns, and even modifications that convert your guns to non-lethal weapons are all options for the player who wants to take a gentler touch. But the question is, do any of these methods do anything? For most of the enemies in the game, using a non-lethal takedown will leave them writhing on the ground, unable to act, functionally the same as if they were dead. They never get back up, and once the player leaves the area, they will never be seen or heard from again. Neither their death nor their survival has any impact on the world. This, taken with the fact that the game has no global karma or chaos system as consequences for the player's actions, means that there is no functional difference between killing and sparing the common enemies of Night City. Slinking through the city like a ghost, with no one knowing you were even there, has exactly the same result as carving a bloody path through the city, with whole neighborhoods left empty in your wake. But what about unique enemies, like Cyber Psycho encounters and boss fights? Cyber Psycho encounters usually request you take them down non-lethally. However, in these fights, the last hit you make against a Cyber Psycho will almost never kill them, regardless of the lethality of the player weapon, trivializing the non-lethal aspect of the job. Even if you manage to kill them, the result is never a fail-state for the quest, only a slight reduction in reward money. The most unique aspect of these quests, the requirement of a non-lethal takedown, is both trivialized in gameplay and reduced to a suggestion by still rewarding the player for failure. This leaves us with the four main boss fights in the game: Royce, Sasquatch, and even Adam Smasher. The most unambiguously evil figure in Night City can be spared, but none of this has any real impact on the story. The only boss who shows up in-game again after being spared is Oda, who only has an inconsequential minor appearance if you choose to side with Hanako Arasaka in the finale. While murder is shown in the story to be an important moral axis that characters are often defined by, there is functionally no aspect of the gameplay that supports this. The player is neither rewarded for mercy, nor are they punished for murder, throwing away a principle in gameplay that is made quite clear in the narrative. Another aspect of Cyberpunk's ludonarrative dissonance is its approach towards cyberware. In the story, The most despicable characters are always depicted with extreme augmentations, from Royce and the Maelstrom's body horror facial replacements, to Atom Smasher's near total body conversion from man to machine. Conversely, sympathetic characters are often shown with few to no augmentations. This is because the game and its external media associates cyberware with the loss of one's humanity. However, when it comes to gameplay, cyberware components have no mechanical downsides. In fact, cyberware is both explicitly required to advance the plot, as well as implicitly required in order to keep your character leveled up with enemies. The entirety of the gameplay loop involves this. If you were to describe the gameplay of Cyberpunk 2077, it would be complete quests, level up, make more money, spend that money on cyberware to complete more quests. The cyberware system cannot be divorced from the rest of the game. It is a requirement in order to even engage with the story at all. And while other characters would face backlash and even full-blown cyberpsychosis from having so many new cyberware augmentations installed in such a short time, the player faces no repercussions from their actions. Atom Smasher is depicted as a soulless monster for replacing his entire body with cybernetics, but V has no such loss of humanity after replacing every system in their body with cyberware. The rules of cyberware are treated fundamentally differently between the player character and everyone else, creating ludonarrative dissonance. While the upcoming DLC, Phantom Liberty, introduces new mechanics punishing overuse of cyberware, this appears to be solely a gameplay mechanic, with cyberware still having no effect on how the player character is treated in the story. The world of Cyberpunk 2077 is one rich with themes of class, corporatism, transhumanism, and more. It is a game where the player is free to explore these themes through over 100 quests, each exploring different aspects of the overall story of Night City and its denizens. However, not all of these themes are explored equally in the game. The way the narrative handles murder and cybernetics is undercut by the way the gameplay handles these same topics. Ultimately, though, these aren't issues of any twisted morals on the part of the developers, but are issues of oversight and the conflicting needs of game design. There is a market for a game where you can become a cyborg warrior, destroying everything in your path, with little regard for the consequences, but ultimately, this comes into conflict with the actual heart of the story, and muddies the developer's vision for a game as a whole. Since Phantom Liberty doesn't appear to address any of these issues, and with it being the last DLC for this game, I hope CD Projekt Red can further bridge some of these gaps between gameplay and narrative in their upcoming Cyberpunk game. I'd like to see them go from making a good game to an even better game.